Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern, and thank you so much for joining me. Have you ever wondered why some organizations seem to have a better, easier, more successful time getting donations or growing their business, or, why some organizations choose to throw in the towel and others keep going, or maybe it's feels like somebody just came out of nowhere and they were an immediate success and you're just wondering, like, how did they do that or why did they do that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm joined by Bryan Clayton, who's the CEO and co-founder of GreenPal, which is an online marketplace that connects homeowners with local lawn care professionals. He is sharing kind of what his entrepreneur experience has been like and why he feels like he's been successful and why he has continued to move forward. And it's a great conversation. I think you're going to gain a lot of insight. No, it's not a nonprofit, but the strategies and the thought processes are still the same as far as keeping going, believing in your mission, continuing to grow, and just that misnomer that things are overnight sensations, because they're really not. Even though you just heard about them, a lot of times they've been going through a lot of challenges in getting to that point. So like I mentioned, Bryan Clayton is the CEO and co-founder of GreenPal, and GreenPal has been called the Uber of lawn care by Entrepreneur Magazine and has over 100,000 active users completing thousands of transactions per day. Before starting GreenPal, Bryan Clayton founded Peachtree Inc., one of the largest landscaping companies in the state of Tennessee, growing it to over $10 million a year in annual revenue before it was acquired by Lusa Holdings in 2013. Bryan's interests and expertise are related to entrepreneurialism, small business growth, marketing, and bootstrapping businesses from zero revenue to profitability and exiting. And he's going to talk a lot about what the experience was like of growing his first business, what life was like after he sold it, and then switching gears completely from lawn care into the tech space. So I think there's lots of things that you guys will glean from this episode, I really hope, just depending on where you're at in your business, what you're trying to accomplish, and what your long-term goals are for your organization. But before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by our digital marketing therapy session. So we are now almost through the month of February, about halfway through the month of February and halfway through quarter one. And so I hope you'll take me up on our digital marketing therapy sessions. These sessions are 30 minutes. We'll record it. We can work through whatever it is, what your fundraising goals are for the year. If you have questions about, email marketing, about reaching out to your donors, retaining your donors, all of those things, we can talk about whatever it is with your website and your digital marketing strategy to keep you moving and keep you on track with your fundraising goals for 2021. You can book time with me at thefirstclick.net/office hours. And I look forward to seeing you in those sessions and getting to know more about you and your nonprofit organization. So for now, let's get into the episode. You're listening to the Digital Marketing Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Bedell-Mulhern, and each week I bring you tips from myself and other experts, as well as hot seats with small business owners and entrepreneurs to demystify digital marketing and get you on your way to generating more leads and growing your business. Hello, everybody. I would like to welcome Bryan Clayton to the podcast. Bryan, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a super fun conversation. I'm really excited to kind of challenge people to think a little bit outside the box. But before we kind of get into some of the nitty gritty, you've obviously had a lot of ups and downs in your career. You've had a lot of success. You really changed the mold. Like why is it so important for you to really just kind of jump in and do things differently? And how have you found that to be inspiring and exciting for you?
Well, I've never had a job. I've never had a boss. I've always been in business for myself. My dad actually forced me into entrepreneurship when I was in high school. He said, "Hey, get off your butt. You're going to go mow the neighbor's grass." Yeah. And he made me go mow the neighbor's yard. And ever since then, I was just hooked on entrepreneurship, hooked on business ownership. I actually stuck with that little lawn mowing business all through high school and college and grew it to be a real company. And over a 15-year period of time, I grew this little lawn mowing business that my dad forced me to start to over 150 employees, over $8 million a year in revenue. And I learned a lot about how to build a business from scratch over a 15-year period of time, how to build teams and how to sell a service. And in 2013, that company was acquired by one of the largest landscaping companies in the United States. And after I sold the business, I learned something about myself. I learned that for me, business is the thing that just causes me to keep forward. It is the thing that causes me to get out of bed in the morning. It's the thing that causes me to learn skills that I have no interest in learning and reading books that I really don't want to read. But it causes me just to be smarter, more humble, wiser, sharper. And without business, without that influence in my life, then I kind of get stagnant. And I learned that the hard way when I took 6 months off after selling my first company. I was like, wow, okay, I need to get back in the game. I need to get back in the arena because that's what I'm wired to do. That's my purpose. Mm-hmm. And so the idea for Green Pal, which is the business I'm working on now, was just born out of kind of solving my own problem that I saw the 15 years running a landscaping company. I saw how hard it was for a homeowner to hire a lawn care service. And I also saw and experienced how hard it was for lawn mowing services to make a living. And so I set out to build an app to make all of that run easier. And so been at this 8 years. We're an 8-year overnight success, doing $20 million a year in revenue. Wow. And so that's 20 years of entrepreneurship. And I guess the main thing is that it's the thing that causes me to keep moving forward, to keep driving forward, keep learning stuff. That's why I love it.
Yeah, finding your passion, I think, is so important, that energy. But it cracks me up that you said you took 6 months off and essentially got bored, right? We hear that so much with entrepreneurs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like happiness. Everybody says follow your passion, and I don't know. I think that's so trite. I think like fulfillment comes from purpose. Yeah. And for me, my businesses have always been the source of that purpose. It is the thing. Okay. Like I'll ask myself, if it weren't for me, then X. If it weren't for me, then what? And my business is the answer to that question. If it wasn't for me, then, the 20, 30 people that work for me wouldn't have a job. The thousands of people that use my software that I have helped build wouldn't have the benefit of it. Small business owners that use the platform we've built to operate their business wouldn't have access to that. So it's like, it is the thing that causes me to have purpose.
I love that. So I think it's interesting that you started your business in high school. So obviously no real formal business training. So what was it like at that stage of your business in processing what your next steps would be in growth? Like, how did you know what to do in order to get more lawns and to kind of build that?
Yeah, especially back then in the early 2000s, we didn't have YouTube, didn't have podcasts like this one, didn't have a whole lot of online courses where you could learn this stuff. So a lot of it was just trial and error. And I always just tried to observe my competition and what they were doing. And I just tried to do it a little bit better. And so that's the main thing that got me through the first 5 years of that business. Looking back 20 years ago and 20 years of running businesses, one thing that kind of makes sense to me, kind of looking at from the rear view, is looking at business as though it's almost like a video game and almost like treating it as like 10 levels. And so, like, to use the old school Super Mario World example, if you can just look at business as, okay, I'm on level 1 and all I need to worry about is get through level 1. I need to get through level 1 and raise the flag at the end of level 1. I don't need to worry about level 8, 9, and 10. I don't even need to worry about Bowser right now. I just need to get through level 1. And so, like, that might be 10 grand a month in revenue or 10 grand a year in revenue, whatever it is. Like, you need to define that, get through that level, and then attack the next level, which is going to be a little more challenging. It's going to be a little more sophisticated. And as you go through the levels, you can kind of progress through and kind of slay the dragon at the end of each level by itself and not get overwhelmed with all the things you're worried about.
That's amazing. And I think so true, because we tend to see, like, somebody might be listening to this and hear you talking about how, you have these very successful money generating businesses and think, okay, I need to be there right now. But you've been working at it. It's not like you did it right away, right? Your lawn care business took a long time to get to where it was, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think that's a great way to process and think about that.
Yeah, everything that's big starts small. Every business that's huge starts tiny, and so that's the way it's always been for me. When we started GreenPal, which we know we have several 100,000 people that use the app, doing $20 million a year in revenue by selling grass cutting, which is incredible. But the first several years were very, very, very difficult and challenging, and it was a slog, and they were humbling. But to use the video game metaphor, like, we didn't know how to build a product. We didn't know what the product needed to look like. And so, like, level one, level two, I I drove for Uber. I drove for Lyft. I walked dogs on Rover
Yeah.
and Wag. I delivered food on Postmates and DoorDash. I cleaned houses on Handy and HomeJoy to try to learn how those products were crafted and architected, and to learn firsthand how these companies that were further down the journey than I was, my team was, how they were approaching product design and how they were crafting these marketplaces that were connecting buyers and sellers in different industries than ours, but a lot of the stuff carried over. And that's how we learned. That's how we got through level two. So we didn't worry about, oh, like, we need this top class, world class designer, or we need this mood board of color schemes for our brand. It's like, no,
Right.
we need to build a product. We're on level two. We need to figure out how to do that. How do we do that? Let's go copy others that are doing it, and let's get to work.
So how do you, because I think we tend to want everything all at once. We're definitely I just lost the word. Immediate gratification, right?
Absolutely.
We want that immediate gratification. And I think when we are starting a business, or, when you're a nonprofit and you're, supporting a mission, we want, or we think like we want it faster, because we know, just like what you said, like, if I don't do this, then what? Like, it doesn't support XYZ, or I can't hire people, or I can't support whatever. So how did you mentally and emotionally rein that in so that you weren't feeling like you needed to just do it all right away?
A few different ways I approach that. The first is, for me, I try to look at business as an infinite game. As just Simon Sinek just wrote a book called The Infinite Game, and it's kind of what it's about. That your business or your nonprofit or whatever it is you're working on is just the thing you're going to be working on, and it's not like I got to get this done in a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's just by default what I'm working on, and so you look at it as though it's your life's journey. It's like the storyline of your life, and that helps you kind of reframe it. And the other thing is for me, especially in the early years, I just knew about myself that I was always just going to be working on my best idea. And GreenPal was and is my best idea. I guess maybe I'm just not very creative. I don't have many good ideas, and that's what's kept me in relentlessly focused on this project. But that's just what has gotten me through a lot of the lows. Is I'm just always going to be working on my best idea. I think what causes failure for a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly new ones, younger ones, kind of millennial entrepreneurs and Gen Z entrepreneurs, is that they just give up too quickly.
Yeah.
They don't realize that, look, it's going to take you a year just to figure out what the heck it is you're doing. Another year after that to get pointed in some kind of right direction, and maybe a third year to get profitable, a fourth year to build a decent sized business, a fifth year, sixth, seventh, and eighth year to build a big business, and a ninth and 10th year to sell it. And so that's the reality. And I think a lot of times we're tuned into like the tech press and the business press, and we see these huge, massive figures being thrown around, billions of dollars, and things seemingly happening overnight, but they never do.
Right.
They never happen overnight. Even if it did happen overnight, I mean by a year, 2, 3 years, that what you don't understand is, and what I didn't understand is that 3 years for that founder is like part of a 20-year journey or a 10-year journey. Like, they started and failed on 2 or 3 things before they started that thing.
100%.
And when they started that thing, they already had all of the experience. They had all of the contacts, all of the network. They already knew how to do whatever it was they were trying to do, build software or whatever. And so it's like, you're not looking at 3 years, you're looking at 10, or you're looking at 20. You don't realize how long these things take, and you just have to be patient, but also hold yourself accountable to knock down goals and set goals you can achieve.
Yeah, I think failure is a hard thing for people to understand. Like successful people, there's not a single successful person that you can look at in any industry that doesn't have a few failures under their belt. And that's how you learn.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Bill Gates, one of his quotes is success is a horrible teacher. And it is. You only learn from things that don't work. You learn from things that just didn't click. And that's how you stumble onto the things that do work. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's just table stakes for anybody starting a business. You have to be like relentlessly focused and perseverant without a loss of enthusiasm, just going from failure to failure. That's just what it takes.
When I started my business 4 years ago, and I agree with your timeline 100%. I mean, I could have thrown in the towel so many times because there were months where it was like, I'm never going to get another client. Like, what am I doing? But it's literally taken me 4 years, like in my fourth year, where, I mean, we provided all sorts of services in the digital marketing space. But like this year is the first year where I'm like, I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly who I'm talking to, so it does take time to develop all of those things. And had I not provided some services that I don't do anymore, just because they don't light me up anymore, I wouldn't know, like I wouldn't be where I'm at. If I would have quit, then I wouldn't be where I'm at and growing. So I love that you bring that up.
Absolutely. Just get started, get working on something, learn, rinse and repeat, and don't give up. That's how I think you win in business.
So you also don't become successful without running into a bunch of people that don't agree with what you're doing, the approach that you're taking, think it's a good idea, whatever. So I'm sure you had quite a few of those throughout your whole journey. I mean, what do you say to people? Like, how did you work through people not believing in what you're doing or not agreeing with the way you're approaching things?
Starting a business is one of the most humbling things you can do, because the marketplace is a relentless river of feedback, and it's unbiased. It doesn't care who you are. Like, your mom or your best friend is going to like give you advice or feedback, and it's going to be like skewed because they don't want to hurt your feelings. But the marketplace doesn't care, and it's going to give you just true, unbiased, unvarnished feedback. And that's one of the beautiful things about business. And you look like for instance, like race horses, like they have those blinders on either side of their head.
Right.
And like the reason why they have that is because if the horse looks left or right, and it even cares about what's happening to the left or right of it, it's going to like make it miss a step and maybe even like fall and break its leg. And so it's like that's why they have those blinders. And like you almost have to approach your business in the same way. Like you cannot care about what your social group or peers think. All you can care about is what your customers say and do, and if they keep coming back and using it. And like for me, like starting GreenPal, one of the most humbling things was starting the app. Like I was running a landscaping company that was 150 people, 10 million in revenue, and kind of a known commodity in my little industry in my city in Nashville, and had to start all over again selling $27 lawn mowings, and like that was humbling. And then I had this crappy app that barely worked, and like just begging my own family to use it. I mean, please just use this piece of crap so I can figure out how to do what it is I'm trying to do. And like my mom wouldn't use it. And that was humbling. And my best friend wouldn't use it. And it's like, well, I've already got my lawn guy and I don't really feel like changing. Like, dude, I need you to use this app I'm building. So no, I really like the way he does it. Like, dude, I need you to like help me use this thing I'm building. But like, so my point is, it's humbling, but you have to develop thick skin. You can't care. You have to understand that like, you're not doing this for anybody, but your team, your vision, the people using your thing. And you just, you get stronger because of it. Like, I mean, I'm glad that it kind of went the way it did. And now we have several 100,000 people using, the technology we've built, and it's that unvarnished, relentless, like true feedback is why we are where we are today.
Yeah, I was going to say if you hadn't gotten that feedback, you probably wouldn't even have as many users or maybe retain as many users just because you wouldn't have worked out all the bugs at that beginning stage.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the feedback from users and customers has always guided what it is we're working on, what it is we're doing. And like that right there is just something that I think every business owner needs to do more of, is just reduce and remove all of the friction that's in front of your customer giving you feedback. Make it as easy as possible for them to give you feedback, good or bad. And then you'll never be at a loss for what it is you need to be working on and improving.
So now when it comes to customer feedback, because this is, as we're growing and building and getting more visible, the feedback sometimes comes from a negative place, whether that be on social media or it comes from, your customer pipeline. I mean, there's always the 10, 20% that you can't please. So any feedback or thoughts for people to just kind of, I always just tell them to ignore that, just move on, or maybe, kill them with kindness with your remarks on social, but that can derail people.
Yeah. I've serving the general public for 20 years, I've come to realize that I don't know what the number is, but it's somewhere between 5 and 10% of people are unsatiable.
Right.
You can't do anything to please them. And so you can't, that's not what you need to be focusing on. You need to be focusing on the 10 people that are telling you the same thing over and over again. You need to fix that. Yeah. The one person that's unreasonable and unrealistic, don't waste your time trying to fix that, because you're never going to satisfy those people. But you do need to triage around, okay, we're actually hearing this same thing multiple times a day or multiple times a week, and we need to focus on fixing that. And a lot of times too, even those insatiable people can help you in terms of how you upstream manage expectations too, and weed them out and don't onboard them as clients because they're not good fits. And so how do you off ramp them? And for us in our world, we have a type of user that wants to let their grass grow 6 feet tall and wants to hire a lawn mowing service to come make it look like a putting green for $25. And so in the early days, these people were like a plague for us because they were constantly barbecuing us on Yelp and Facebook and Google reviews. And because they just didn't understand that's not possible. And so we actually use that to inform how we message the product and the onboarding experience along the way to manage expectations. Like if your grass is over 12 inches tall, it's going to be triple the price and it's not going to look good. Click here to approve if that's the case. And so now we don't have that problem anymore. And so it's not just tune them all out and just ignore them. You don't need to engage them personally because they're just a waste of your time, but you can use the feedback to modify how you manage expectations and off-ramp some of those people that aren't good fits for your business.
No, that's great. That's a great tip. I think negative feedback, we tend to it tends to hit our emotions as opposed to using it as marketing research. We love to listen to people telling us how amazing we are all the time, but they're not going to really give us that piece, that missing piece, like you said, in your copy, in your language, and how you talk about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's kind of like I've got a buddy that I hang out with from time to time, and sometimes we'll go to lunch, and if I eat at a restaurant and the food and service is terrible, if the burger's cold and the waiter doesn't ever come back, I'm not saying a word. I'm just not coming back. My buddy will wear that waiter out. I mean, he is on their butt. And if it's not good, he's like, can I talk to the manager? And when he does it, I'm just like, geez, dude, please don't. Please don't. And it's he will tell the manager what they're doing wrong. But it hit me. It's okay, I'm not that type of consumer. But the reality is you don't want me in your restaurant. You want my buddy.
Right.
You want him because he's the guy who's going to tell you where you suck. I'm just not coming back.
No, that makes total sense.
Yeah. And so it's the feedback as the proprietor, as the owner, as the entrepreneur, as the founder, the feedback is not happening to you. It's happening for you. And if you can just develop that thick skin and not take the stuff personally and leverage it to understand what it is you need to work on, then it can help make you make a better business.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to flip gears just a little bit because I know getting into the online space is something that is like super tricky for people, but with COVID, definitely something businesses had to get more comfortable with. So, you wouldn't think that a lawn mowing business would be something that would be an easy transition into, online marketing, into the online space, and then especially flipping into an app. So what would you say when you were growing your business? Like, how was that transition for you? Or just because you were younger, it was easier? I mean, I can hear everybody saying, well, if he,
well, for me,
younger than he knows how to use it, it's easier for him. But what was that like for you?
I spent 15 years in the lawn mowing business and the landscaping business, and traditional blue collar, hand-to-hand combat in the trenches, trucks, lawnmowers, sent out something like 80 or 90 trucks every day. And it was a traditional business. And I sold that company. And then I decided, okay, I want to be a tech entrepreneur. I want to start a tech business. And luckily I was naive and I didn't know what I didn't know. And that was the only thing that got me in the game. Because if I had known how hard it was going to be, I would have been scared. I never would have done it. So that naivete at times can almost help you kind of get through and get started. And so like when we started Green Pal, I knew the industry. I had spent 15 years in the industry. I was kind of solving my own problems really. But I didn't know the first thing on how to write software or how to build software, design software. And so my co-founders and I believed that we would just pay a development shop in Nashville where we live to build Green Pal. And then we would market it and we would just be off and going. And that's like totally not how it happened, how it worked out. We spent like $150,000 building this app, and it was a total failure. And this wasn't like money we had sitting around. This was like these guys liquidated their 401ks, put money on credit cards. I mean, just to try to get this thing started. And it was a total failure. And what we learned the hard way was that if you're going to be in the tech business, if you're going to be a tech startup, a technology company, you have to have in your DNA the ability to execute tech. You have to be able to build software. You have to be able to market software. You have to be able to like execute these things. And so we just, it was one of those moments where, like I mentioned earlier, I just knew, okay, well, I'm just always going to be working on my best idea. So let's just do the next thing we can do. And my two co-founders had quit their jobs at Dell. They were making like $110,000, $120,000 a year. They quit those jobs to basically make $20,000 a year on this tech startup. And so for them, there was no going back. They had kind of burned the boats. And so we just started working on like poring over every YouTube channel we could, every online class we could, every online school we could to learn how to build software. And we just worked on the second version of the app. And 3 years after that, we had something. And so It was tough. It's not impossible, but it was tough.
And so do you think it was just the whole, like, we know we have a good concept and this is the best idea that we've got right now, so we're just going to keep trucking on it?
Yeah, using the video game metaphor, like, we set little small goals, and the first year we just wanted to do 100 transactions in a week, and we didn't hit it. We only got to like 50, but this is 100 transactions. When I had a company before, was doing like 1,000 lawns a day. And so it's like, it was really humbling, but I just knew if we could get to 100, we can get to 1,000. I knew if we get to 1,000, we can get to 10,000. Mm-hmm. And so we really focus on small goals that we could hit. And then we would try to meet with every single, especially in the early days, we would meet with every single person that would try the product, that would meet with us. And the product really stunk back then. It didn't work. And it was not reliable. But when we would talk to these people, we could at least see that they were disappointed. Like, they were ticked off that the push a button, get the grass cut app didn't work. Mm-hmm. And it was the fact that they were ticked off and disappointed and like upset about it was, in a weird way, the validation we were looking for.
Yeah. So they weren't saying we don't we don't need this as a service. They were just saying this isn't working how we would want it to. So you had validation in your product.
Right. The story would always go, my lawn guy disappeared. He quit calling me back. I called 3 guys on Craigslist. Nobody called me back. I hired somebody on Angie's List. They didn't show up. I called 2 people on Google. One gave me a price that was 3 times what I was used to paying. I hired my next door neighbor's recommendation and he missed the backyard. And then I found your app, which was the promise of hire somebody in less than a minute and they'll come and do a great job at a great price. And it didn't work. And I was disappointed. That was the validation we needed to know, okay, this is worth spending the next 10 years of our life building this.
So I love that you're saying you took the time to speak to your customers one-on-one. I think that's something that a lot of people don't do, whether they're afraid of the feedback they're going to get or they don't think it's valuable. But again, I mean, the nuggets that you're dropping here, I think are just really important for people to listen to, in how to really respect the people that you're trying to serve and allow them to give you the feedback that's going to help you grow. It will almost help you grow faster than you just being inside your own head and assuming you kind of know what the marketplace wants within your product or service.
It should go without saying. I mean, it's just one of those things that all of us as entrepreneurs should know to do, but we all want to shy away from it because it's not pleasant and it's not fun. But if you don't do it, you could set yourself off on the wrong course, like the wrong vector. Like in the early days, like a vector, if it's 1 degree off tilt, 3 years later, it's in a totally different direction. And so in those early days, when you're talking to the first 10, 20, 100 people that are doing business with you, that sets the direction in the proper path to where you have a chance at success. If you don't, and you just, work on your own unvalidated assumptions, then you're just relying on luck and even not good odds, even at that. And so it's table stakes. You have to talk to your first several hundred people, customers, users, whatever you want to call them, people that are using your product or service, to understand what your value proposition is and why they're doing business with you versus the alternatives, and what problem you're solving, what it is you're working on. If you don't do that, then you're really limiting your chances of success.
Well, in those first 100 or so customers that you spoke to that were telling you they were disappointed in the product, like you said, they're the people like you sitting in the restaurant. They could have been the people like you sitting in the restaurant that just never used your product again, right?
Exactly.
But because you took the time to speak to them, take their feedback, they're probably more willing to give your product a second chance. And then when they do have good results with it, are going to be your ambassadors telling everybody, right? That
oh yeah, in the early days, it's twofold. In the early days, you're hand cranking sales, and so you're converting a customer, right? You're turning somebody who wasn't ever going to use you again into somebody who's going to use your service, and that's great because you need those sales desperately, especially in the early days. But even more than that, you're getting learnings to understand what it is you're working on, understand what problems you need to solve, and understand what your copy even needs to say, and how you're positioning the product and pricing it. That early adopter customer feedback is from the first dozen or 100 people is crucial to setting the tone for what it is you're doing. And it's one of those things, there's a guy by the name of Paul Graham who heads up this accelerator called Y Combinator, which has produced on your home screen on your phone probably 2 or 3 of the apps on that phone. And so one of the things he says is do things that don't scale in the early days. You have to do things that just will not scale. And meeting with, understanding what the inside of every Starbucks in your town looks like, because you have done so many coffee meetings with so many users, is something that doesn't scale. But you have to do that in the first year or 2.
And then now that you have a product that's launched and successful, I mean, are you still serving your customers in more of a digital format to continue to gauge that you're staying on track with your clientele, or just to see how your user base is changing and evolving?
Yeah, as time goes on and, you get thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people doing business with you, you have to figure out ways to preserve that user experience without you having to meet them at the Starbucks down the road. Yeah. And so, but the thing is, you don't even know what those things are until you hand crank them. And so for us, we look at things like what we call red flag metrics, which is if somebody has been using our product for the last 6 months and then they're no longer using it, well, what's happening? Like they've gone 3 weeks without a service. They need one. So we need to reach out to them. We need, hey, what's going on with the service you hired? Did they do a good job or not? Okay, they didn't. Okay, well, let's find you another one. Like preemptively understanding when things are going wrong and getting out in front of that. And then also just looking at like the passive feedback of for us, we're a multi-sided marketplace. So like for the service providers that aren't doing a good job, we're able to understand if they're not doing a good job. And the way we look at that is, are they getting booked for subsequent services? Are they showing up on the day that they're hired? Are they getting good reviews, like qualitative reviews? And the ones that don't hit certain metrics, we sideline. And so here we are, year 8. That's how we preserve customer experience. In year 1, it was like a spreadsheet and like looking and calling people.
Yeah.
And so, but we wouldn't have been able to get to where we are had we not done that hand cranking.
Yeah. Well, and I know for some folks that are listening, hearing serving tens of thousands of people is like definitely never going to be in your wheelhouse or might be terrifying. But I think even if you're talking about growing from like 2 customers to 500 customers, a lot of this is all automation and just understanding the way that your processes work. And just like you said, being able to reach people before like you don't want them coming to you and saying, hey, where's this? You want to always proactively be reaching out to them to solve their problem before they feel like.
Absolutely. And you don't have to be a software engineer to improve these experiences. There's off the shelf pieces of software that you can buy and implement into your business to make it run smoother, make it run more seamlessly, and leverage technology to improve your customer's experience. Even if you only have 100 customers, if you're a roofing contractor and you sell roofs, well, you can implement a piece of software to follow up on your customers. Hey, how did it go? And then 2 months later, hey, is the roof leaking? Okay. And then 6 months later, hey, just checking in, making sure everything's okay. We appreciate any referrals that you might have, or if the roof's not leaking, leave us a 5-star review on Google. Like there's ways to leverage off the shelf SaaS in any business, small or large, to make it run smoother and deliver a better customer experience at a fractional of a marginal cost, because it's not like you're hand to hand, like doing all of these things.
100%. Bryan, you've shared so many good insights, and thank you so much for just letting us, peek into your brain and how you kind of found success and what that's looked like. I mean, do you have any other kind of last words for entrepreneurs, inspiring people to kind of continue to grow and just keep at it?
I think the way to win is not giving up. Like we mentioned earlier, I think if you just really look at like your life as a movie or as a story, and the storyline of your life, and your business can be that storyline. Your business can be the thing that lends your life purpose and meaning, and can also be the thing to help you make something of yourself. And if you kind of look at business in that grand sense, then it kind of helps you get through the low points. And the other thing is, like, what else are you going to do? You going to go work in a cubicle? You really want to do that? You really want that? Let that scare you to grind through the hard parts. Yeah,
I think that's a great place to end that. That's a great visual. Definitely
awesome.
Keep that in mind. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Bryan, if people want to find out more about you and your companies and what you've done, how do they do that?
Yeah, anybody that's listening to this doesn't want to waste time cutting their own grass. They can just download GreenPal in the App Store or Play Store. They'll get hooked up with a great lawn mowing service at a great price in less than a couple of minutes. Anybody that wants to get at me, you can hit me up on LinkedIn. I've been hanging out there more and more lately, and you can just shoot me a message there.
Awesome. And we'll put all those links in the show notes for this episode so people can find them easily.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks for having me on. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. So what did you think? I think Bryan dropped so many amazing nuggets of knowledge and just things to think about and ways to reframe the way that we think about our day-to-day business, our short-term goals, our long-term goals, and kind of how we process what success really looks like. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I really hope you'll subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen, especially on Apple Podcasts, so that more people can find us and glean information and grow and build their organizations so that you guys can support so many more people in the communities that you guys are giving back to. So for now, I hope that you'll check out the show notes at thefirstclick.net/podcast, and I'll see you in the next one.